Super cool intro.
What's up guys, Monty428 here, back with another commentary video, and today I have part 2 of The Legend of Money Mike. Before we get into it, I of course have to make sure that that meal is set in front of all of you, ready to be devoured as you absorb all of this information. If you have that set up, then next I need you to just take 10 seconds to breathe. Whatever you have going on in life right now is irrelevant to the present moment, so take a couple of big breaths and let any stress you have fall off of your shoulders, because now it is time to get into another chapter of Money Mike's lore. Ready? Let's go. The last we left off in Mike's timeline, he was banned from a grocery store, but allowed to return after making a humble apology to the manager. That was 3 years ago. Since then, he hasn't been outright banned from anywhere else, but he might as well be. It comes off like all of the managers on the strip have formed an alliance against Mike to shoo him away from their stores and restaurants, because what they'll all do is give Mike a time limit for how long he's allowed to stay inside. I'm actually getting ahead of myself though. We need to go back in time to nearly 1 year ago. Since the grocery incident, Mike kept away from any real trouble, but trouble was destined to find him anyway. This time in the form of a hobo who I'm going to nickname Fetty. You see, Fetty is not a nice guy. This young man voluntarily left his family and home to become a hobo on the strip, simply because he hates them, for reasons unknown to me. His family pleaded for him to come home, but he much rather wanted to stay dirty and disgusting, sleeping on the ground and living off of loose change. I have no sympathy for this man because of his track record, which I will get into in a moment, but also because of my own personal encounters with him. He would occasionally come into my store to buy an item or two with his change, wearing a giant coat that smelled like absolute shit, because he was incapable of taking showers since he just lived on the street, and tugging along a shopping cart with a backpack and laptop inside it. Even though he was living the hobo lifestyle, he still had a laptop, a phone, and Beats headphones, all of which he was able to charge at the nearby park. The thing is, whenever Fetty would come into my store, he would just ramble on for minutes about absolute nonsense. He could never make a coherent statement and would always trail off into another train of thought halfway throughout a sentence. And since I'm a curious guy, I would always just stand there and listen to him ramble. Here is some audio of him.
I'm paying this suffering already about it. The fact that I got hit by a car.
And I was reading on the news, they said that you were like in the memorial.
Are you fucking go look at that thing now, bro? Wait, that's mine.
Yeah.
Go look at that thing now. Tell me if it doesn't think. I'm sorry, but you exploited something on there, and you want to say you didn't do it? Trying to get somebody. If I didn't do what I had to do, you know how fast that would have been eliminated. For everybody to know about it. Do you guys want to be known for being gay? If it came down to being gay, or you just want to, leave it like I'm gay or what? It's like they're so homophobic about being gay. It wasn't about the money. It was you would have been rich. You would have. What's stopping you from getting rich?
They're like bothering.
What's stopping you from getting rich? You know what I mean? What's stopping you?
It seems like they're chasing.
No, they don't want it to happen. They just want to be right about it. They don't want. Oh my God, got old folks, Holy Ghost, with them bitch ass.
Basically, Fetty had peed on a memorial because he believed the memorial was erected far too late to show that people really cared about the subject it was for. And that is why he then goes on to talk about gay people. He said that the pride parades have no value because similarly, they should have been happening in the 60s, 70s, and 80s instead of the present day. Obviously none of that makes any sense, but it's that aggression in his voice that personally ticks me off. He has a short temper and eagerness to verbally harass other customers and civilians, which he did all the time. This trait of his is similar to Mike's, but the difference is Mike is usually warranted in his aggression, while Fetty's is purely based on whatever mental illness is controlling his emotions. I've seen him rant to a customer about, well, I don't really even know, but that customer simply nodded their head in hopes of him finishing and leaving them alone, only for Fetty to then snap on them and begin screaming as if they were in an argument. Also, I really like his line delivery in that audio when he asks if he knows how fast he would have been eliminated had he not peed on the memorial. I'd love to investigate the people who apparently forced him into doing that. Around Christmas time of last year, Fetty crossed the line. As I mentioned in my first video, on the other end of the strip there is a coffee and donut shop, which is the main place Fetty would loiter around. Leading up to that fateful night, he had been getting into more frequent arguments with the manager of said shop. These arguments culminated in a fit of furious rage when Fetty waited at night for the shop to be empty, aside from the lone working manager. He entered and walked behind the counter, threatened to kill the manager, and then assaulted him with his bare hands. He then stole a bottle of soda from the fridge and made his exit. This attack left the manager in a very bad state of health. He was already blind in one eye, and the assault left questions as to if he would go blind in the other eye as well. After about 2 or 3 months of recovery, he was able to return to work healthily, but with a newfound hatred of, well, hobos. Before I go any further, though, you're definitely wondering what happened to Fetty. He was arrested about an hour after the attack and eventually sentenced to jail time. He was charged with aggravated assault, endangering an injured victim, stalking, making terroristic threats, criminal mischief, and shoplifting. All of those terms are awful, but it makes me happy to read those terms off in the context of him being charged for them. Once the manager returned to work, he swiftly told Mike that he could no longer come into his shop. Even though Mike isn't an actual hobo, he just acts like one, the manager wanted no more of the attitude or atmosphere that hobos brought to the area. And as we discussed in the first video, Mike is no stranger to having an attitude with others. Thus began a new era in Mike's life, one where New Haven had factually turned on him. Although he spent some recent years being disheartened by the changes the town was going through, he now genuinely became alienated and disregarded by his own people. Mike would find loopholes in his ban, however, like the fact that he could go into the shop as long as that manager wasn't there. It's not like the manager could be there 24/7, since the shop is open from very early in the morning all the way to the end of the night. And since Mike had lived in New Haven since he arrived at 5 years old, he did have acquaintances at the shop, with one of them being the assistant manager who worked when the actual manager wasn't there. Mike is also allowed in the shop if someone buys him food, which is an offer he gets all over town. In fact, just the other day he was given 10 singles to buy food from a nearby pizza joint, which he brought to me in exchange for a $10 bill. Anyways, in the coming months, other stores would follow suit and tell Mike that he is not allowed entry, which, to be fair, makes sense considering Mike is simply loitering, but he is generally liked by most people still. He is friendly and is friends with a lot of workers around town. But at the same time, Mike can have an attitude, and he also smells pretty bad most of the time. Definitely not nearly as bad as Fetty smells because he is just pungent, but Mike does have a scent. When it comes to my store, though, the manager has imposed a 5-minute rule. Mike is allowed to come in and chill, but after 5 minutes, he must leave. The reasoning for his ban from my store is that customers complain he smells bad, and he is a distraction to the cashiers. If you ask me, a cashier, well, like I said, he does smell pretty bad. Not nearly as bad as Fetty, because I do have a general weak sense of smell, but Fetty is just like a whole nother level, so I usually don't mind, and I don't consider him a distraction at all. I have no problems with staying alert and focusing on tasks, and I really do enjoy listening to what Mike has to say most of the time. He does have some outdated opinions that I do not agree with, and he can be quite verbal with said opinions, which has annoyed me at times. But honestly, I appreciate Mike's disdain for not conforming to modern standards. He may say some pretty bad things, but sometimes words are just words, and at the end of the day, he stays in his own lane and doesn't do anything that coincides with his opinions. As you now understand, Fetty's heinous plot had unintended consequences for Mike, who had never been involved. Over the past year, Mike has repeatedly sworn his hatred for Fetty and what he did to him, stating that he hopes Fetty is rotting in prison and that in the future he will be rotting in hell. With Mike being outcast from the strip, he has become a more bitter person, but that has only strengthened his bonds with people like me who refuse to push him away. A month ago, Mike obtained the corporate phone number for the coffee shop and informed them of his unjust ban. A few days later, the manager gave him a chair to sit outside, but merely a week after that, he would take the chair away, effectively trolling him. So, Mike still has yet to notice any real difference in the manager's attitude towards him since the call. One of Mike's main concerns with his ban is that he has nowhere to sit outside, so he ends up sitting on the ashtray by the door. Whenever he leaves my store to go to the coffee shop, he'll tell me that he's going to sit on the ashtray. And when he's in my store, he'll either sit on the quarter machines or on the front end of the line of shopping carts, which ends right by my register. I was actually finishing up this script about 2 weeks ago when news broke. Fetty was back in New Haven. Supposedly he had been spotted right outside the coffee shop, but no pictures of him were taken. I wanted to wait at least a week or so before coming back to this video just in case anything else came to light, but so far no one has seen or heard anything else. I told Mike about the rumor, and the look on his face was terrifying. At first he was worried about what that could mean for what was left of his standing within the strip, but then he said that he wants to see a fight, and that he hopes people pull up to attack Fetty. There was also a new hobo that appeared just days before the rumored sighting, and so Mike believes he is an associate of Fetty's. He says that they're in cahoots, but regardless, that guy was told to stay away from the area by the police, so I doubt that that is the case. Fetty should have a restraining order as well, so if he really is out of jail, then he isn't allowed anywhere near the strip, so it's possible that he really was there that one night, but he won't be coming back. This situation reminds me of what happened with Duncan from Total Drama Island. But anyways, when I was talking to Mike about the rumor, this sweet old lady overheard us and dropped in with some valuable insights. In a crazy moment of coincidence, it turned out that this lady knew of Fetty quite well. Before he lost it and attacked the manager, he pretty much used this woman to buy and make him food. She would often purchase dinners for him and even made him extra food from the dinner she'd made for her husband. She felt really bad that he was in such a troubling financial situation and thought that she was helping him out while he tried to find a job. Among other meals, she said she even made her special eggplant parmesan for him. Oh my God, so sweet. However, one day she found him outside the coffee shop smoking weed, and she questioned him on this. She didn't care so much about the act itself, but rather that he had money to spend on weed, and would rather spend his time and money on that instead of getting a job. Fetty responded by asking her what she was going to buy him for dinner that night. Absolutely appalled by the disregard and disrespect that Fetty had just shown her, she put her foot down and said nothing. Like she actually said the word nothing. He was not getting dinner that night. Props to her for not spending another dime nor a second caring for this man. She told me and Mike that if he has money to spend on weed, then he doesn't need her help. And let me tell you, she sounded so hurt when retelling that little story. It was very sad to see that her kindness would be taken advantage of. For her sake, I hope she never has to see him again. But anyways, that's going to wrap up this chapter of Money Mike's lore. I know it was more about Fetty than Mike himself, but as you now know, that character has played a huge role in the current chapter of Mike's life. Next time I think we'll get into some more stories that Mike has told me over the year, and I'll see if I can perhaps set up an interview with him. Leave a comment down below telling me what you'd like me to ask him, and I'll get you the answer. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe for more content in the future. Have a great rest of your day.